Esaenai el heharim mehayin yavo Ezri Me'im Adonai Ose Shamayim Va'aretz Adonai Yishmorcha Tzedka Uvoecha Me'ata ve'ad olam Me'ata ve'ad olam.
I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. This morning, we are assembled in loving memory of our beloved Gary Weiss. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. In the sorrow and the quiet emptiness that echoes with the longings for a dear husband, a loving father, and a dear friend now gone from life, may each of us find comfort in the companionship of loved ones who can offer us solace. Facing the death of our beloved Gary, we join our hearts with his family, with his wife Deb, with his sons Sam and Ben, and with his extended family, each of whom enjoyed the larger-than-life personality of Gary. And we also extend our comfort and sorrow to all who knew and loved him, as we now say goodbye to this especially beloved man. For Gary's love, which united us in life and which death cannot sever, for his companionship that we shared along our life's path, and which still continues through the tenderness of our fond memories of him, for the wonderful gifts of his generous heart, his genuine laugh, and his loving embrace. For all of these and more, Gary has blessed our lives. So many memories, so many emotions rush to mind as we confront the death of one who was so full of life. Our fond memories of Gary mingle now with the tears of our loss. Pride in his achievements and our sense of joy as we recall the times of gladness we shared with him in life. These mix now with our sense of anguish at his all too early passing. We recall the affection he gave us and the affection we had for him, the misdreams for our future with him at our side mixes with all of this. All of these emotions and more flow through us now as we are asked to accept the realities that Gary's death places before us. For even as we fondly remember him, surely the death of a loved one brings a measure of darkness to our world. So many words are still left unspoken. So many ideas have yet to be expressed, insights to be garnered, stories to be told, and times to be shared. And this too is a great part of our loss. Loss and sadness, though, are not alien to any of us. In times of grief such as this, the voice of the psalmist calls out to us as he reaffirms for us that despite our anguish, there abiding with us in the tears of our sorrow are the possibilities for journeying towards hope. Despite the pain of loss, our sages teach us we can find opportunities for wholeness and peace. And so now I'd ask you to join with me in the ancient words of the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Adonai roi lo echsar binot asher yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yenach aleini nafshi yishovev yanacheni memaglet tzedek yancheni v'maglet tzedek leman shemo gam kilech begit samavet lo hirara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha hema Yinachameini Taroch Lefanai Shulchan Neged Tzorai Dishanta Vashem Roshi Kosi Rivaya Achtov Vachesed Yirdefuni Koyamei Chayai Koyamei Chayai V'shavti B'veit Adonai Le'orech Yamim Adonai Roi Lo Echsar Adonai Roi Lo Echsar.
The wisdom literature from the Bible offers us words by which to view our own lives. In Ecclesiastes, we read that in the course of life and death, there are moments for all the varied possibilities of behavior. And so as we confront the death of our dear Gary, we find that our expressions of loss may come in every form. And we realize that in the course of our own life, we must endure a full range of life's experiences. For everything, there is a season, Ecclesiastes wrote, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep silent and a time to speak. Dear friends, now is certainly a time for us to speak. The Jewish tradition teaches us that it is the sharing of our memories that sustains us when someone close and precious to us is taken from this world. It is through our words, through our expressions of our love for Gary, and the sharing of our wonderful memories of him, through which we now might find a measure of comfort. Yet as we remember him, we ask, what can one say? How can mere words sum up the whole life of a man? Gary was born in the Bronx, New York, to Leonard and Clarisse Weiss, and I will let Deb share how she and Gary met. Together, they found joy in their two sons, Sam and Ben, with whom he loved sharing his passion for the Jets and the Mets. And he loved spending Sundays in the living room with the whole family dressed in their jerseys, cheering on their team. Gary loved everything about food. He was a great cook and a great food critic. I met Gary more than 16 years ago, and I shared his love of good food. I have cooked with him, celebrated family simchas with him. I have laughed with him and cried with him. One thing I knew about Gary was that more than food or even the Jets, Gary loved his family. And among the great works of literature stands the Talmud, the Jewish collection of law and legend. The great rabbis of the Talmud teach us that words which come from the heart most touch the heart. And so now I'd like to call upon members of Gary's family, who each have words from their hearts which they would like to share. And so at this time, I'd like to invite his brother-in-law, Michael, to share some words.
I was born in Long Island, and my family consisted of a mother, father, and a sister who was 4 years older than me. There were no other siblings, and since my parents got it right on their second attempt, there was not going to be a third child. It meant I was not going to have the chance to have a brother. My guy friends had brothers. They would room together, they would roughhouse, hang out, play video games, share similar interests. Not me. I had a mean older sister, and she didn't want to hang out with her annoying little brother. Yes, that was my identity when I was younger, Debbie's annoying little brother. I was sure if I had an older brother, that wouldn't have been the case. They would have taught me things, they would have hung out with me, they would pal around with me. Clearly, this was not in the cards for me. It didn't end there. My extended family, all girls. 4 cousins, not one boy. Clearly, I was living alone in a woman's world. But when I became a teenager, an amazing thing happened. My sister brought home her first serious boyfriend. And while I might have annoyed him, he never let me know. In fact, he let me do things with him. He would take me places, hang out with me, do things that brothers do. He even gave me a cool nickname. Instead of Debbie's annoying little brother, I was now known as Mike Action. Unfortunately, my brief moment of having a brother was short-lived, as he really wasn't a keeper. And once again, I was back to only having an older sister. One good thing came of this. I learned I could still have a brother if my sister would only meet somebody. But what was I going to do? My sister wouldn't even talk to people in public. Something she would very much outgrow later on in life. She didn't cook, and her version of doing laundry was using fabric softener instead of detergent. On top of that, she relied on my mother and stepfather to help dress her. Things were not looking good for me. But then she met Gary. And as long as things went well, I would have a new brother prospect. But on the first date, she brought Gary back to the house to meet my mother and Joe. Who does that on a first date? Then her next step was to bring Gary to meet my father at lunch with me. Now, as a disclaimer, I should mention my father had suffered a severe stroke years earlier, and you were never quite sure of what was going to come out of the man's mouth. Sure enough, my sister excused herself to use the restroom, and that's when my father leaned over to Gary, talked about the 70-year-old woman that he had been dating, and said, "Best sex I've ever had." I couldn't believe it. These people were killing my chance of getting a brother. But Gary just laughed and he rolled with it. He cooked, he cleaned, he loved to go to the grocery store, and his family was even crazier than ours. He wasn't going anywhere. We played golf together. We talked about sports. We went fishing. We laughed at the same jokes. After 25 years, it finally happened. I got my brother. Gary, with Debbie's help, would soon give me two amazing nephews in Ben and Sam. And he and Debbie would build a wonderful life together. They clearly complemented each other, and our family was finally complete. After we learned about Gary's illness, Debbie had to learn how to shop, take care of food, and a variety of other things that Gary took care of. None of this was easy on my sister or the family, but I'm convinced that Gary and the universe somehow found a way to make sure Debbie was well trained on all of the things she would need to be doing to make sure her and the boys were taken care of. Gary was one of a kind. He hated people. Can you Deb, going to 5 minutes. Can you imagine if he liked people? They'd need a bigger building. He would talk about how he hated people, but the funniest thing was, most people would tell you he was the most personable person you would ever meet in your life. He loved to cook, he loved to grill, he loved family. He was so excited when we had Sarah, and when Tracie and I met 20 years ago and our families became blended, Gary welcomed and treated everyone in my new family as part of his family. We are here today to acknowledge, mourn, celebrate the impact Gary made on all of us. There are many stories to be shared and many memories to reminisce about. We are all lucky to have had time with Gary, and I was lucky to have my brother. Thank you.
At this time, thank you, Michael. That was the Gary I knew. At this time, I'd like to invite Aunt Pam up.
It's not really right that I have to follow that. Just say it. Sorry. I have the honor, actually, of reading a letter that each of the boys wrote to Gary that they want to share. First one from Sam. Dear Dad, thank you for being such an amazing father. Through all the good times and bad times, I could always count on you and knew you'd be there for me. I will always remember gearing up in our Jets jerseys, getting ready for game time. All four of us screaming at the TV like somehow our words would actually make them play better. I remember driving to Hilton Head, South Carolina on a family trip and hearing Paul Simon come on the radio. Suddenly, you started singing on the top of your lungs and car dancing to Loves Me Like a Rock. It was so unexpected coming from you since everyone knows you weren't much of a music fan. Mom, Ben, and I joined in singing and laughing. It was such a great memory, and every time I hear that song, it takes me right back to that day. When I was in 7th grade, I decided that I wanted to learn how to play golf. Since you were a golfer, I knew that I wanted you to be the one to teach me. I asked you to take me out with you, and you agreed. That was the beginning of how my love for golf started. Dad, thank you for everything. I love you so much. Everyone loves you so much. Thanks for being the best dad ever. I love you, Sam. And Ben. Dear Dad, your charisma and energy were unmatched. You never failed to make me smile, no matter the circumstances. You were always easygoing and fun, unless I was messing with the stuff in your bag. Nobody could touch that bag. You were always there for me, coaching and or supporting me during travel baseball and basketball games. You always helped give me the confidence when I was out of my comfort zone. And most importantly, you always found great ways to embarrass me in public. Whether it was you making a scene at a restaurant or having weird conversations while ordering at a drive-thru, you always found a way to give me secondhand embarrassment. Your favorite thing was threatening to spray us with Windex in the car when we weren't listening. I'm going to have to hear about that later. Although I was definitely embarrassed by some of these things, they never failed to make me laugh. I also enjoyed the countless Sundays we had watching and cheering on the Jets. No matter the record or circumstances of the team, you were always there to cheer them on in your Nick Mangold jersey. Lastly, I want to let you know how much you've inspired me. Your strength and will, both physically and mentally, are things that inspired me to push myself further and further. Over the years of my life, there have been infinite amounts of obstacles which you have had to face. Even through all of the different challenges, you were still always there for me, and I could not appreciate that anymore. I know these past few years have been the most difficult for you, and I hope that my presence when I was home from college put a smile on your face. Thank you for being the best dad I could truly ever ask for. Love you, Big Chief, Ben.
Pam, thank you. At this time, I'd like to call up Deb, who has some words that she would like to share.
Thanks. Dear Gar, it's only been a few days, and I really have yet to comprehend what has happened. The last few years have been rough, with the last several months being almost unbearable. Unbearable to watch you be tortured both mentally and physically. It has taken a toll on all four of us. And even though we all knew what the outcome would be, and I even wished for it, so you would be out of pain, I never really wanted this day to come. How could I? You've been my partner in every way over the last 30 years. We built a life together, and at this moment, our highlights reel is continually rolling in my mind. It begins when we were fixed up by the bookkeeper at the company where you worked. I was the accountant who visited monthly. One particular month, the bookkeeper mentioned that she felt you and I would be a good match. We didn't know each other, and when she pointed you out to me, I told her I had assumed you were married. You looked married. Whatever married looked like. You had a thick head of dark hair, a well-groomed beard and mustache, and a pot belly. You were talking on the phone and laughing, leaning back in your chair with a foot up on your desk. You reminded me of a young Santa Claus, and I had always been a huge Santa fan, so I was definitely interested. From there, you played hard to get. My friends thought I was crazy because each time we would get together or chat in the parking lot after work, you would never ask me out again or even call. But I would tell them that I was sure you did in fact like me. I finally won you over when you offered to come and fix my dryer in exchange for a home-cooked meal. The only problem was that I didn't cook. No, really, I don't know how to cook at all. Naturally, I went to my mother and I asked, how the heck was I going to pull this off? She told me to buy some chicken, apricot sauce, rice, and string beans. The cooking instructions she gave me seemed fairly easy, and I was slightly confident I might actually be able to do this. You arrived on a Saturday afternoon with your toolbox in hand. I heard a lot of banging coming from the other room while I was in the kitchen covering the chicken in the apricot sauce. I went in to check on you after a while when you hadn't come out. I thought you might be on to me and were afraid that you might wind up with food poisoning. You did eventually get the dryer working, and we began to share a bottle of wine as dinner was cooking in the kitchen. I was really starting to feel good about the whole situation. The scene was picture perfect right out of a movie. It was perfect until you asked if I smelled smoke. By this time, I had drunk a glass of wine or two and had forgotten that I was even cooking at all. You went into the kitchen, saw that the chicken was burning. You then looked at the rice and asked me if I had added the seasoning. Seasoning? I didn't even know I was supposed to do that. In a matter of minutes, we each learned quite a bit about one another. You surmised from the way I was just standing there, wearing a puzzled look on my face, that I had absolutely no idea how to cook. Luckily for me, I learned that you did know your way around the kitchen. Not only did you know your way around, but you were actually an accomplished cook. That was the night that everything changed and our relationship truly began. Months later, I asked you what had stopped you from calling me when we had first met, and you said you were happy with your simple little world. You were 35 years old, and you liked your quiet, predictable life. You didn't want to rock the boat. Boy, not even I could have predicted just how much I would rock that boat. We quickly were engaged and planned on marrying less than a year later. My friends thought I was rushing into this relationship because I was turning 30 and my clock was ticking. But my mother assured me that wasn't the case. She knew you were the man I was meant to be with, and she was right. Our lives quickly turned upside down, moving to New Jersey, changing careers, and working together. Now, those years were quite a roller coaster ride, and I certainly wouldn't want to relive them. Our working styles were polar opposite, which led to a lot of arguments and tears. But we eventually figured it out and were lucky to work together until your health forced you to retire. We struggled with infertility for years, and I'll never forget how we both went from being absolutely petrified when we learned you would need to give me injections to you deciding it was actually a fun game. My tush became your personal dartboard, and I had to draw the line when you proposed that it would be entertaining to see if you could administer the injections while blindfolded. No joke. It took many attempts, but thankfully we did eventually become parents to two beautiful boys. You were so easy and confident as a new dad. Nothing flustered you, and absolutely everything flustered me. Of course, you knew the right way to bathe the boys, give them medicine, take their temperature, and feed them once they were eating solid food. As they became toddlers, you were painstakingly made sure they were as fastidious as you were, always scrubbed clean and never a hair out of place. You were a mush and such an incredible loving dad. You were hands-on in every way, and that continued for many years until your health got the best of you. Sam and Ben have so many warm memories that they will have forever. Memories of a dad who loved them both so intensely and whose life was truly dedicated to his family. As far as our relationship was concerned, it changed and morphed in so many different ways as the years flew by. As with most couples, we knew how to push each other's buttons and could annoy each other as no one else could. However, there was never one moment when I ever questioned just how much you loved me. Never. And even though I complained to my friends and family about you criticizing how I did the laundry, loaded a dishwasher, or even made toast, there was never a question in anyone's mind just how deeply I loved you. And now here I stand, having to face the rest of my life without you. An unimaginable task. In my heart, I always knew this day would come, but never wanted to face it. The boys and I are so incredibly blessed to be surrounded by so many loving, caring people to help us navigate our new reality. But at the end of the day, only we will be left to figure it out. Oh, you know me, Gar. I'll be tough on the outside, going through my to-do list and making sure everything gets done. Most of the time, putting on a brave face for the boys and the rest of the world to see. But on the inside, when I'm alone and quiet, I will be trying to wrap my head around the idea that you are gone. You won't be there to make me laugh or irritate me with all your nonsense. You won't be there to help me when my lack of common sense rears its ugly head or when I need fashion advice. You won't be there to watch the boys continue to grow into men or hopefully one day to play with our grandchildren. I wish I had the ability to change all of this, but I don't. Instead, I will go forward, focusing on just how lucky I was to have been your partner, sharing your life, love, and laughter for the past 30 years. I will love you for all eternity.
Deb, thank you. Thank all of you for your words of memory and love. It's now for us to carry on Gary's memory, to enable him to live on in our hearts and minds as we cherish the precious legacy of his life. We say in our tradition, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, may the memory of this righteous man always be a blessing. And we pray that the memories of Gary Weiss will ever inspire us to build on the strengths and the lessons of his life, that we might say with blessing and with pride, to know his life was good. He left his mark on me. His work stands fast. Now let us pray silently, each in his or her own words, each in his or her own way, each with the special memories we treasure of Gary that we were privileged to share.
Oh, say shalom bimroma uyase shalom aleinu ve'alkol Yisrael ve'alkol Yoshvei Tevel ve'imeru Amen ve'imeru Amen ve'imeru Amen ve'imeru Amen.
Before we conclude this service with the El Malei Rachamim, just one brief announcement. Family and friends are invited to the Weiss residence between 4 and 8 p.m. today and tomorrow for Shiva. Shiva services will be at 7 p.m. both this evening and tomorrow evening. At this time, I'd ask you all to please rise for the El Malei.
El Malei Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Chashchina B'ma'alot Kedoshim Utchorim Kezohar Rakia Mazhi Et Nishmat Gedalia ben Leonard and Clarisse Shechalach Le'olamo Behal harachamim. As direu beseter knafecha leolamim. Utror bitzrach hachaim et nishmato. Adonai hu nachalato. V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo. V'nomar Amen.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Gary Weiss, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.